Greetings and salutations to our fine podcast audience. Welcome to 3 Peas in a Pod, episode 264.
We made it.
Yes, we did. We had an off week last week. Apologize for that. No, I don't apologize for that. Why am I apologizing?
I'll say it's summer. We had
summer.
vacations.
Everybody needs a break,
Yeah.
including our wonderful audience from us.
That's right.
Probably
true.
We have
That's
a
enough.
we have a bunch of Monday. We film on Mondays, and we had Memorial Day and vacations and all
That's right.
kinds of stuff. So
That's
I have no need to apologize.
Okay, then I won't.
This is a free podcast. They get what they get.
Right.
We have no responsibility to them.
No.
Other than to
And they
answer
don't have
whatever-
responsibility.
They have no
That's
responsibility to us. So
But here you are. You hit play on this podcast.
If you support
or
our
video.
Patreon page.
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah.
would be different.
You're not sending money to us because they
That's
ain't
right.
one. But
That's right.
send it anyway if you want.
No,
so,
that's true.
but we're back because we got a question.
We do have a question.
We have a question, and it's obvious that someone's been paying attention because the first part of the question says, I know you guys have been covering the topic of marriage recently.
That's good. That's
And we
good.
have, so thanks for paying attention. We have been talking about marriage. So we have a question considering marriage. So
Mhm.
here's the question. My boyfriend and I are looking at getting engaged soon. Is there some things we should keep in mind and practice together during the engagement period or a pre-engagement period?
Hmm.
So thanks for asking because you got, a couple old married guys and a
Mhm.
medium-sized married guy.
Well,
medium
medium
aged
rare.
married guy. I
In
should
our
say.
current culture, he's an old married guy
He
too.
is old
That
married
is
guy.
true.
How long you been married?
16 years. this year.
Nathan's been married
Couple
16.
months.
I've been married 28.
I've been married 45.
Wow. I was saying, I think we're inching up near 80, 90 years of, what is that? I don't
Combined
do
marriage
math.
experience.
I don't do math well.
I
but
think, any of us could say the length of our marriage, and in any public setting that we said it, we'd get.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I'd
we-
agree. Yeah.
But that does not mean anybody wants what we have. That's what I've come to realize is
Yeah.
lots of people are applauding and then getting divorced the next day.
That's true.
Well, but the truth is, whoever's sending this question wants us to answer it. They want to hear our perspective. So you're
Mhm.
going to get that perspective,
Yeah.
whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
You're going to get our perspective on that based on our experiences. But it has been a while since we've been engaged.
That's
Long time.
So let's talk in that direction. Her and her boyfriend, would like to know some things that they need to keep maybe their eye on, some things that they might need to do between
Mhm.
now and getting engaged, and then getting engaged and married. So who wants to start
They're
on that?
not engaged.
It says
I
they're
missed
not.
that.
They're
They're
thinking about getting
thinking
engaged.
about it.
They're engaged to be engaged.
They're heading
They're-
toward the engagement period.
Gotcha.
You know, in my day, when you brought up the engaged,
You were.
you were engaged.
That's it, huh?
You didn't whisper those words.
Mm.
You didn't talk about being engaged. Once you brought it up,
Mm.
that was happening.
Yeah.
You secretly asked lots of
You know-
questions to figure out things before you ever said.
Do you think
I-
he'll say yes?
Do you think if I were to ask you in some big dramatic way that I could post on Instagram, would that be an embarrassment to me?
No,
Or
I think social media has changed that whole thing. Honestly,
Maybe.
now that you bring it up, I've noticed that there's a lot more planning and a lot more orchestrating of the moment that I've noticed.
well, that's for sure.
yeah,
Mhm.
like trying to make it more photo worthy
Mhm.
or
For
Instagram
sure.
worthy. You know, because
It was a very private moment back in the day. It was not.
Yeah.
We weren't asking anybody at the ballpark to put us up on the board
Oh,
and
those are
have
great.
50,000 people wonder along with whoever
That's
was
right.
asking
That's right.
what the answer was going to be.
And can we just be honest? It is way more entertaining when she says no.
Oh,
In
sure.
those circumstances.
Yeah.
One, I know that young lady knows her mind.
Yeah.
Because she got a lot of pressure to say yes. And then later when they walk to the car, go, hey, man, that was a bad scene. The answer is no.
Yeah,
that's right.
Not gonna do it. Okay. So, in light of that, other than the Instagram-worthy engagement photo op,
Mhm.
what do you think couples really should focus on or be paying attention to pre and post engagement?
They should go to some professional
Mhm.
that will help them talk through things that they don't think they need to talk through.
Yeah, I think
Or
that's
haven't even thought of talking.
That's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
the
I
kind of
think
stuff I
both.
mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done a little bit of premarital counseling in my practice, and that's one thing that I've noticed. I have a list of things.
Mhm.
You talk about having a professional. I have a list of topics that I I tell every couple that reaches out to me, this is usually my experience. And I'm not saying this is you who asked the question. Most of the time when a couple reaches out to me and says, hey, we'd like to do premarital counseling, my answer to them is that you need to commit to at least 8 to 10 sessions because we got lots of things to cover. And usually they go, that's not what I was wanting.
I was looking for the discount on the license.
That, and I was looking for you to just sit with us for maybe an hour or two and just tell us, hey, good job, you did
Y'all
great.
look like you're going to be perfect.
Go get married. And I'm like, no, that's not what this is. Because I have a long list of things, at least 10 to 12 things that I think you ought to sit and talk about on a pretty deep level.
Yeah.
And some homework that I want to send you home with so that you can do that on your own. And then I also get people who will say, well, we're getting married like
tomorrow,
next week, and I'm like, well, you're not going to get very good counseling if any.
Here's my premarital counseling to you. Don't do it yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stop.
Slow it down.
Slow down.
Yeah.
That's always been my thing too, is I always say, the best thing, time is your friend. And when I say that, what I often tell couples is, I say, what you want to do between now and the time that you walk down the aisle is you want to experience life with your partner in as many different various life circumstances as you possibly can, both good and bad and indifferent, and observe how your partner handles those situations. Because there's a point in every relationship that I've noticed where, let's just be honest, we are putting on a front. We are trying to convince this person that I am a certain type of person that you'll want to spend the rest of your life with and walk down the aisle with. But then there comes a point where you can't keep up that charade very much longer, and your true colors come out. And I don't say that in a completely negative way. I mean, but you just need to know what they're like. And so you need to see, like, for instance, you want to see, to this question asker, you want to see your boyfriend all around his family.
Yep.
You want to see how he interacts with his siblings or his parents or his extended family, and what's that relationship like, and what do you see and feel when they're around each other?
And the reason for that is because good or bad, you are getting them in the deal. You can say that you're not, but all the drama that comes with everybody in the other person's family will eventually be attached to you, even if it's just the other person going, I'm not having anything to do with them. But that's a deal too.
Yes, it is.
That's a deal too. And that will long term, y'all need to get, that's why I say talk to a professional. If somebody will help you untangle that. Why is it you and your mom don't get along? Why is it? And a lot of people these days come from families where they got, a mom and a stepdad and a dad and a stepmom and maybe a couple of more of those. And they got a lot of relationships and they don't get along with all of them. But all that is coming to be a part of this other person's life. And every relationship that you interact with, it complicates your relationship if you don't understand how you're both going to handle it.
Yeah. And so I think you want to see them in as many relational situations, life circumstances. You want to see your future spouse, what are they like when they're angry? What are they like when they are depressed and down? What are they like when they're, having a great time? How do they have a good time? What are they like when they're sad and grieving and mourning and all of those things? Not that there's a right or wrong way, but it goes to the character of the person and what type of life that you're going to have together. And I don't say all that to say that you're looking intentionally to, eliminate them, but you're kind of, you want to have the experience now before you get in a situation where you're stuck in that for at least in a situation where it's going to be much more difficult to work through it or to walk away from something like that if that's what you need to do. I'm not saying you should, but time is your friend. Having all types of experiences with your partner is only going to help you. So I think Ed and I both said this for years. I've heard us both say it in messages, and I'm sure Nathan agrees. I've never had a single person say to me, the one thing I regret most about my engagement period is it was just too long.
Yeah.
we should have been faster. We should have gotten married sooner. But I hear the opposite a lot.
Yeah, sure.
That I got married too fast. So anyway, that's just my first thought.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and I've had this conversation with lots of younger people doing youth ministry for so long. Regularly, people would be at the place where they're wanting to get married or they're getting engaged or whatever. So I would have lots of conversations, and I think all the stuff that both of them said about the length of time is really important. I would just say, in general, the length of time you've known the person and been around the person, I think, because classifications of what counts as dating and what counts as this, it's very hard, how long you should date, or that's impossible for me to know. But how long have you two been close enough in a relationship you can see how are they a dependable person? Are they a trustworthy person? When they say they'll do something, do they do the thing they say they're going to do? Or do they always have an excuse? No matter how good the excuse is, it's always a thing. But I also would try to figure out the 3 areas I tend to talk about with people, because I don't have people in a professional setting like Jason might. I'll frequently say the number one thing you got to figure out is your faith journeys of, does this person, not do they believe in God and not do they go to church, but do they value their relationship with Jesus and with his church at the level you do? And hopefully, are they even someone who inspires you and wants to kind of, you look into and go, oh, I love that part of their faith and I wish I had that. Are you the one that's always bringing up Jesus? Are you the one always bringing up, I have to do this thing because I've got to be at church. I got to do this. If so, that speaks more to the person's conviction. Because what I've found is, and it depends on what age you are too, because I will say that's different. But, my wife and I, we started dating when we were 15. And a lot of our personality and a lot of our character has shifted so much. I mean, we've been together in a serious relationship for about 20 years. Our personalities and all of that has shifted over time as we've grown and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, it has to. It always does.
Right. But I would say our core conviction that Jesus matters most to us and that being involved in his church really matters. And so I would look to that. The second thing I always tell people is what you think about family and how family should operate, I think is, and maybe not even think about it, but what does that look like? Because I agree see them around their family. And also when you start to notice things and you're like, that's kind of a weird way to do family, or that's a pretty messy, or maybe that's kind of a dysfunctional way. Do they agree with you? Because all of us have weird and dysfunctional things about our own families.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
But it is important that you and your future spouse are on the same page of, we don't want to carry that into our family. Because once again, I haven't dealt with a lot of people in a professional setting, but just in a pastoral, as I'm getting to know people and talking to them about what's going on in their marriage, one frequent thing I see is, he takes his mom's side on every issue of the thing, or she takes her mom's side on it. And there's this third person in the marriage at the time, because I got to do my family's way of doing things. You got to do yours. And we weren't really clear on what do we want. Do we both want kids? What does that look like? What's the timeline? Yeah. All that kind of stuff. So I would say, look at that. And then the final thing that I've seen really mess people up is I would try to start figuring out now, what does it look like for us to handle our money together?
I was about to say that.
Okay. Well, that's the third one I say frequently to people is both of you may have different ideas. And, I would often, because once again, I would just be talking to people who are mostly getting married young. And so they haven't had years to build up lots of savings and lots of money. So they're starting, even if they have well-paying jobs, they're not starting with a lot of margin in their finances. Yeah. And so I'll talk about, are you both okay struggling financially for a bit and saying, we're going to really pull back? Yep. Because when one person's like, nope, when I move out, I got to have X, Y, Z, all
everything my parents had, I have to have.
I got to have.
And I have to have it now.
At 25, I got to do that. As I'm starting getting married, that's one way, or if he or she has really bad spending habits, every weekend they go shopping, and that's the thing is we got to go out and get all those kind of things. Do we agree that we're building something together, and money is one of the tools we're going to use, but we got to be on the same page about that. And so,
yeah. So I was just going to say, I don't know if this is so don't quote me on this being a trend. I don't have statistics to back it up. This is all anecdotal, and this is my opinion that's probably not very popular. But my experience recently has been there are a lot, especially young married couples out there who have separate finances. That's been my experience. It has been shocking to me, quite honestly.
I'll say, just to back up, anecdotally, when I talk to other couples who are mine, it is the rare couple I know that they've got one budget.
Yes.
I'm going to say, me too.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
Me too.
That's been my
experience. And that's
experience
young
too.
and old.
Okay.
And my experience on
I only
this,
talk to the younger couples.
Okay.
go ahead. I'll let you go since you started it.
I was just going to say that that's what I'm seeing. And to follow that up with, I think that's a mistake. And
I would agree.
I'm not saying that if you're a couple out there that does it and you figured out a way to do it well, okay, fine. It's been my experience that leaves you open to a lot of problems, potential problems down the road.
Well, the only way I've ever seen it work, and this is rare because people don't want to do it, is we have to decide up front, there can be my money and your money. There must be a third pot called our money that at the beginning or somewhere during every month, we both contribute to, and we have an agreement going into it. If our money doesn't get funded, the your and my money goes away.
Yeah.
Sure.
There must be, it's like a partnership of, hey, I'm going to get paid and you're going to get paid, but we're both going to make sure the business lives. But the moment you don't put your part in, all of that goes away and we got one pot. Because we either have to have one pot or because I don't know what you're doing with the rest of the money that you couldn't contribute because I see you go off. That's the argument you have.
And
I see you going off.
And it builds resentment already in the
huge
relationship.
resentment.
And that's where what I meant by the potential problems. Those are the ones that I see happening a lot.
Yep.
And you can keep that from happening if you plan it out, like either like Ed said, or you combine right at the beginning and you just share that.
Well, and a third,
no secrets from each other.
I would say I have a third way I've seen it work, which is that, and I hadn't thought of this, but I have a son that has done this successfully now for coming up on 10 years. And that is, they decided going in, we're going to live on one of our salaries.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
We're going to live on one of us makes enough that we can maintain a lifestyle we're okay with in this amount of money. And the rest of it, we will use for things we agree on together.
But see, that's still to me combining.
It is.
It's us agreeing. Because what I would say is, if you just want practical advice, which this is a podcast, you don't got to listen to nothing.
No, you asked us. We can say whatever we want to say.
When my wife and I got engaged, we just immediately agreed. Now, we had separate bank accounts because we weren't married yet, so we couldn't get a joint bank account. But we were engaged. And what we agreed was, we had a shared document that was a budget, and she would put in everything she made and everything she spent. I put everything I made.
Before you got married.
Before we got married. And we started working together on, because, and part of that was, we wanted to go into our marriage. I can't remember what the number was because we made so little money.
Yeah.
But it was, we wanted to go in with an emergency fund ahead of time. So we were both contributing on our own in our own bank accounts, but because once again, all money doesn't actually exist. No. It's all a number on a document anyway.
I just finished a great book that I saw 3 years ago, put it on my list, and finally read it last week, called Money, A History of Something We Made Up.
Yes. Oh, wow. I was going to say.
It's fascinating because it is. It's just
a thing we all made up.
It's just a thing we made up.
So it's already just numbers on a document. So we put our numbers on the same document. And because what we wanted to see, at least my part, and I think I was on the same page, I wanted to see when we put, this is how much, we're both agreeing to, I will only go out to eat this much in my single life. I'm a single man. I mean, we're engaged, but I'm not, legally bound to you yet. And I'm saying, will I actually only spend that amount of money? And will you only spend this? And we were working together on it. And it worked well for us. And it was a good practice for me to start saying, oh, I'm accountable to her. Well, I don't get to just stop by Quick Trip on my way home because I know I can work it out as something else because we agreed. And so even at that time, we'd put our date money together and we'd say, okay, when we're going to go out, I'm going to pay this much, you're going to pay this much, which we didn't do when we dated. It was all on me, but
Yeah.
I kind of like that part. We're going to contribute a little bit together and we're going to work it out. So that's one potential way for you to go. If you ask what are things I should practice is
While I'm still engaged. That's a really good one. Nathan.
let's agree to it, because if you're saying I'm going to spend the rest of my life with this person, knowing how much they make should not be too vulnerable. Not during the engagement. How much money they make? How much money do they spend on this?
Well, and I'll say this. The good part of practicing that before you get married, and you're the only one I've ever heard say that, which I think that's a great practice, is it does make me more vulnerable to that person than I was before.
Yeah.
And it lets them see how willing I am to be accountable.
Right, which
Because
is a huge.
If I am not willing to be accountable to you when we aren't legally bound, thinking that I'm okay being accountable to you when somebody says, okay, you husband and wife, you're fooling yourself if you think somehow that accountability is suddenly going to go up.
Yeah.
Which is the other thing I talk about if you're dating. We haven't brought it up yet. Most people in our culture, when they're dating, have sex. And if you want to know what I would encourage you to do before you get married, I would stop that. And we're talking about things you ought to practice. A lot of people in our society think sex is the most important thing in marriage. I can tell you, it absolutely is not. It ain't in my top few, to be honest with you. I'm not saying it's not a deal. I'm not. But and I'd say the same thing about accountability. I used to, when I did premarital counseling, I would have the couple sit at the end of the first session, look each other in the eye, and I would say to them, I assume the two of you are currently having sex. And you're going to get married here in a few months. And if you can't promise each other between now and the end of this time before you get married that you won't have sex with each other between now and then, you're fooling yourself when they say they won't ever have sex with anybody else between now and the end of their life. Because you don't know if they can control themselves or not. But right now, you get a chance to test yourself to see, can I be sexually faithful over the next few months before I promise to be sexually faithful the rest of my life?
And here's one thing I think that's important to kind of tie back. You brought up our marriage series. Jason introduced this idea, which I thought was very helpful. I know it's not necessarily original to you, but you taught us this idea of the marriage hierarchy of needs, and that sex is not on the survival
level.
It's not a base level. It's in that middle level, which is a thing. And my experience, and we said this at the very beginning of the series when Ed was teaching about this idea of cohabitating. One of the reasons that I have just seen that we're going to have sex before we're married and we're going to cohabitate before we're married ends up sabotaging things in marriage is because even when we're cohabitating, we're not both often working on the survival part together of we have a lot of response. We might contribute little bits of money here and there to certain things, but our money's not tied together. And if I have to leave, I can leave. And so we already talked about the money part, but we get all the benefits of the upper level of stuff because I'm personally taking care of my survival needs. And so sex is often a little easier to come by. It's a little more exciting and all that because I'm personally taking care of my needs. I'm not worried about your needs. And then we get together and do the fun part. And so,
well, the amount of times that I've sat with people in really bad marriages and they go, you know, the funny thing is the sex has always been great. And I want to go, well, duh.
Yeah.
You know, we argue, we fight, and we have great sex. Okay. Well, if you want to
sometimes the sex can mask the fundamental
that's
survival
exactly
things.
right.
I think that's what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Is because when you're living up here in this, other level, it's easy to ignore the survival stuff. And so to set that aside for a moment and then learn how to build a team that can support a marriage that I'm telling you, this is what I know you want to hear, but I'm telling you, if you will do that, the sex part will take care of itself.
It will.
I've seen it many, many, many times. It's not, we got to figure out if we're sexually compatible first before we figure out how to build a life.
Yeah, because it's
upside down.
Yeah, in that way, it makes it sound like sex is more important than food and water. I need to figure out.
Well, that's the way people like to talk about
I know.
Well, it is the way our culture,
It's the way the
or that
culture
it's
likes to
on the
talk
same
about it.
level, but it's not on the same level.
Mhm.
And on that note, you brought up something that I can tell you I'm seeing way more often in my counseling office these days, is that when you get this backwards, when you prioritize sex, you think you've made this really clear connection between just the two of you. What you've really made a clear connection with is sex. And then what happens is you get 5, 10, 12 years into a marriage, and then you're going to wind up in a counselor's office because somebody in the marriage is watching porn
Mhm.
or continuing to watch porn
Mhm.
or being very free and loose with their texting relationships with people of the opposite sex.
That's right.
And there's a lot of mistrust. And so one of the first things I say to couples when they come into my office for couples counseling is I say, okay, the first thing we have to establish is the only way this is going to work is if we have a no secrets policy. And I mean that all the way across the board. And a lot of times they look at me like I got a horn growing out of my head because I've seen it. There's two people that have developed these two private lives
Right.
that they don't think the other one has right to. You know,
That's
you
right.
don't get to see what I do on my phone. You don't get to see the websites that I go to. You don't get to see the. You don't get to see the.
I don't see
password.
how that impacts you. Why
It
would you
doesn't.
need to see that?
It
Why?
doesn't hurt you.
It doesn't hurt
Mhm.
you. And
That's
what I
right.
do, it doesn't hurt you.
It doesn't until she finds out about it,
Right.
and then it hurts her, and then you want to know why it hurt her. And so I just say right up front. I said, "Are you willing to give complete access to your spouse to all conversations, all accounts, all passwords, all
Mhm.
websites that you frequent, and let's lay it all out on the table. And from henceforth, if you go there, she knows, and if you go there, he knows, and all the conversations and everything else. And the amount of people that shy away from that pull back from that, I would just say, if you don't start that from the beginning, it will eventually turn around and bite you.
Yeah.
I've seen it over and over and over again. If this person is going to be your partner in life, they need to be your partner in all areas of your life. And that means you're open, you're vulnerable, you're laid
Mhm.
bare before this person. Now, if that scares you, if you have pause with that, there's something you need to deal with in your heart.
Yeah, you probably need to pause on this engagement.
Yeah.
If there's a reason I can't be accountable to this person, I'm going to commit my life to.
Mhm.
I probably, for their sake and my sake,
That's right.
because even you say, well, it's only me, you're going to hurt them.
Yeah.
You may wind up having children. You're going to hurt them. You're certainly going to hurt both of your families who believed you all were going to be together.
Mhm.
And I know people don't think that's true. It's true.
Mhm.
You hurt everybody
Mhm.
around
Me
you.
too.
And you just need, just before you start all that, just pause. Just,
And I'll just give you the best explanation that I can and say, okay, let's say you're telling the truth. There's nothing that I'm doing that is, unfaithful. I'm not, but I should have a private part of my life. What you've also created is you've created a space where your spouse doesn't have the ability to fully know how to trust you, and you haven't shown yourself to be trustworthy.
Mhm.
My phrase I say over and over and over: if you have nothing to hide, you will hide nothing. And so if you have a posture towards your spouse of saying, my life's an open book, I'll make everything available for you to see and understand and experience, then they will go, oh, wow, this person is trustworthy. I can be safe. I can rest in their presence. If you don't have that, though, every time you spend a little too much time in the bathroom with your telephone,
Mhm.
your spouse is going to go, I wonder what they're doing in there.
yeah.
And that part's not open to me, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And so now there's suspicion, and then that grows. And then every little thing that they see, it just creates a relationship of mistrust, or
Mhm.
at least not a foundation of being able to trust.
Yeah.
And so what I'm talking about is if you lay that foundation now and you lay that as the basis of your relationship, there won't be all those questions later.
Mhm.
And so in those situations when you've been together for a while and questions come up, it's all right there, and you don't have to wonder.
Yeah,
So-
I would tag on to all of that as well. Everything we said, which I fully agree with on, once again, practicing now, which is, can I be open and transparent with this person? And are they willing to be open and transparent with me? I'd add just one other thing to that, which is you need to have some relationships outside the marriage that you're able to be open and transparent with. Because what I have found is, and this is why I think church community really is just only your friend when it comes to this, which is marriage, really Christian marriage, was supposed to exist within the community of the church family. It is a sub-family of the church family. The church family does not exist to prop up the marriage. The marriage is part of being a part of the church family. Yeah. And it has only, I've been open again and again I had a porn addiction for a very long time. And certainly I have all of those things where my wife has access to everything that's on my stuff. But what I eventually found was it was important even for our marriage that she knew there were men in my life, Christian men in my life, who are in our church family, who also have access to those things in our life. And they have access to speak into our marriage. And she has women in her life who speak into to her, life as a wife, because it also becomes burdensome within the marriage if the transparency itself can even become a thing of, I got to always check and make sure the other person's doing a thing. But knowing that she knows for me, everything I have, someone else is seeing it. And they're there to watch out for me, and they're able to speak in and hold me accountable as well. And she has people who are holding her accountable as well. And all of that, I think, goes to, even though my relationship with my wife is the closest relationship I have with anyone, it is not the only close relationship I have in my life. And it is a heavy burden to put on her that you are supposed to be able to meet every need that I ultimately have in this life. And I see a lot of young couples who think we're going to make it on our own, and we're only going to have these secrets and they're going to stay between us and no one else knows. It's just a really heavy burden. And there's a lot of hurt that exists in that. Because as Ed said, and Jason's already talked about it in his experience with people, you're going to hurt one another.
Oh yeah.
And each of you is going to need to have someone they can talk to about that, where they know it's not, I'm gossiping about my spouse and I'm trying to belittle them.
And that the other person is also not. I always worry when you have a friend who is for you, but not for your marriage. And I don't mean like they want to break up your marriage, but bro, I got your back, even if I have to keep your secrets from your wife.
Right.
That's a problem. That's not a friend.
That's right.
That is not a friend. I need you to hear me. And if you don't think I'm doing the work I ought to do, you need to do whatever it takes to get me for my benefit of my family.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a friend who is truly your friend in Christ is one who will always push you toward keeping your covenant.
That's
right.
Anyone who does not support you keeping your covenant is not living as a Christ-like friend.
That's right.
So
that's
what
right.
it was meaning.
And so that would be my encouragement to you is if you're, I don't know whether you're a believer or not, but you wrote into a group of pastors. So I got to tell you, I'm going to assume you are a believer, and I'm going to assume you want to build a strong Christian marriage. If 100% go to premarital counseling, 100%. This does not replace that. In addition to that, you guys need to have a church family that you belong to. You need to have significant relationships in those. If you're a younger person, I would be looking for an older couple in the church that could speak into our life, that could have access to our life. I would also want some peers that could speak into my life. I'd want a group that could surround me, that we are committed to them and they are committed to us. And that's, to me, you guys being able to be vulnerable in that and seek, you said boyfriend. So is your future husband willing? And honestly, I would say, well, I don't know. I see women who struggle with the same thing. Being willing to be open and vulnerable about, we're struggling right now.
Yep.
Things aren't good for us right now. And not just with your counselor. Are you willing to say to somebody in your church family, I need you to pray for us, and I need your help because we are not doing well. We're fighting all the time, or whatever the difference is. Are you willing to be vulnerable about that? Because those community of people who will walk alongside you, that it has only been pivotal and beneficial and critical in our marriage. So that would be my encouragement to you.
Yep, I agree with all that.
And there's probably way more that we could say.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's enough for now. I would say if any of this brings up questions for you or you want clarification on anything, write us back. We will certainly love to talk more about it, get more specific if that's what you need. Another thing I was thinking as we were talking is, I know I mentioned it in the marriage series when I taught it here at the church, but I would highly recommend you get that book that I referred to called The Marriage You Want by Sheila Grigor. She's that book, I think, will encapsulate a lot of that stuff for you and give you a little more of how to make that work in your marriage that you are hoping to build to get the marriage you want, the marriage God wants for you. So get that book. I highly recommend it. So,
and if you're a part of our community,
yes.
I would encourage you, one, not only to be in a small group, but Jason had mentioned we're going to be doing a marriage gathering, a monthly marriage gathering. I know you're not married yet, but I'll go ahead and speak for Jason. I think if you're engaged and you're planning on getting married, that would only be a benefit for you to be able to sit with people who are already married, and they can be able people who have any kind of experience love getting to share wisdom, even if it's bad, of don't do what I did.
What we did.
Don't do what I did.
Right.
And that would be a benefit to you. So I would encourage you to email Jason, Jason@community-christian.net, and say, I'd like to be a part of that marriage gathering. You're in the beginning part right now of trying to form what that's going to look like.
And I can say we're planning to start in September.
There you go.
Give it a shot. We'll see. Hopefully see you there. So send us in more questions. Link is in the description. And we're going to be back next week with some follow-up from the messages that we're doing on Sunday, right? I think, is it you coming up this Sunday?
It is me.
Okay.
It is me.
So Nathan has stuff that he left on the cutting room floor that he would like to bring out. So we hope it's good. We don't know.
It probably was on the cutting room floor.
We'll find out. It's kind of like those bonus tracks and those albums that I go, I see why you cut that out.
That's right.
We're going to talk about it anyway.
That.
And you might like it. Who knows?
Who knows?
Show up next week and you'll see. All right. Have a good one. See you later.